Yo, Drake, my brother, I think you're not reading the room here. You just went through one of the most horrifying rap battles of life. I do kind of look at Drake like, bad timing again.
Lawbreeze and Gentlegrams, in today's episode of Lawbree in Gentleland, the wig-wearing womanly Tupac wannabe waistsuit got washed by Joe Budden. Banished from the podcast, the petty petition padre Tupac Manure, the Marilyn Monroe v. Ho, has been beefing with Budden back many millenniums ago. But when it was time to show his bars can blow, Joe's the emasculated mob boss melted like the Canadian snow. But now Joe's retired, so Lawbree's not afraid to send some petty Instagram captions Joe's way. So Joe's returning the stray, telling Tupac to stay away. So let's break it down, but first destroy the like and subscribe buttons till they decay. Now, Lawbreeze and Gentlegrams, I see we're calling Lawbree Tupac now. What does DJ Khaled say? I like that. I can adapt. You know what I also like to see? Lawbreana walking out of his hotel room and being forced to hear a little Danish kid blasting Not Like Us.
They not like us. They not like us. They not like us. They not like us.
Of course, Lawbree security came to check the kid after. Now, in the midst of Lawbreana deciding to take his talents onto Bobby Altoff's podcast, there is one podcast that has shut the door on the opportunity of Tupac Manure ever making an appearance on. And that would be the biggest hip-hop podcast, founded by Lawbreana's longtime frenemy, Joe Budden. Throughout this video, we'll look back in history and break down how Drake and Joe Budden went from lovers to haters. But hey, before we do that, I dropped what's possibly the best, most extensive Rapaholics breakdown of all time, covering the full story of Quentin Miller, how he ended up getting integrated into OVO, and the whole beef between Drake and Meek Mill and what really happened there. There was a lot of questions left unsolved, so we answered them all. I'll leave a link to that video in the description of this video, and you could probably check it up right up top on the right hand side of your screen here.
I study
Quentin Miller
for a living.
But let's get into this Joe Budden debacle. You remember back in the day when the Migos made a song rapping, if somebody's hating, call him Joe Budden? Joe Budden used to be the staple of hate, but now it seems like Lawbreana is throwing more hate Budden's way, and Budden was only reciprocating with love and honest feedback. But no longer, because Lawbree is now banished from the podcast. So Joe Budden and his podcast co-host were discussing the recent Twitter finger tirade the Toronto tough-talking Taylor Swift twin went on Rob Markman, one of the most well-respected, unproblematic hip-hop journalists of all time. So they were talking about Rob Markman's response to Drake, which we'll touch on later in this video, but essentially after Drake left the comment saying, Rob Markman's a goof for not knowing a Lil Wayne lyric, Rob Markman said, I could call you names too, but I know you love to sue. And Joe Budden said he liked how the world is now calling Lawbreana Tupac. And of course this relates to the fact that Lawbreana may have just purchased a fake Tupac death row chain.
He said, I would call you names too, but you would sue. And then that was the end of the exchange.
That was a good one.
It's a good comeback.
I saw a tweet earlier, someone called him Tupac.
Tupac, I saw that. Tupac is funny.
That's funny.
Because he also has the Tupac death row chain that people were saying that he just purchased, which he purchased in 2023.
They say it's fake or something, right? I think someone is coming out and questioning the authenticity of the chain that he purchased.
Oh, okay.
What do you guys think? Do you think the chain is fake? I said it in my last video, the guy who sold Drake the chain, on his website, he had a bunch of insane artifacts from massive moments in pop culture, like Michael Jackson's autographed shoes that he wore on stage, an autographed copy of Thriller from Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones, even a Michael Jackson crystal glove that he wore on stage. The thing is, it kind of sucks for this guy because if this is the business that he runs, he pretty much had it destroyed just because Drake had to go on and flex this chain right when Kendrick came out in LA with the clips as a way to kind of, pettily try to one-up him. I don't know if pettily is a word. Lawbree was being petty, right? He was trying to distract the public from the fact that the clips and Kendrick had just linked up live on stage.
Microphone that Pusha T used during the show. It had his autograph on it. That was like a really, really big Clips fan. I used to pretend I was perform all the Clips songs in my basement with the mic. And then I performed with it so much that I rubbed the autograph off. At the time, it meant the world to me, though. I'm gonna regret even telling this story. I'm gonna regret even telling this story.
Embarrassing.
And as a result, now you have a bunch of people who were closely affiliated with Tupac, including Suge Knight, all the way from prison, talking about how there was only one of these death row chains, and it's not the one in Labry's possession. But the guy who sold it to Labry is claiming that there was multiple of them. Tupac had several of them made, and this was just one of them. Maybe not the one worn on the All Eyes on Me album cover, but it's something that had been in Tupac's possession at one point. And if you don't understand why people are in uproar over Drake buying something like this, think about it like this, right? Kendrick Lamar has been wearing this X chain at every live performance on the GNX tour.
I study
Kendrick Lamar
for a living.
Imagine, God forbid, Kendrick Lamar passes away, even if it's in, decades to come. But when he does, there's this random rapper who has no real affiliation to Kendrick, not from the same town as him, doesn't, take massive inspiration from the sound of Kendrick's music. Let's say he's from Canada and Kendrick's from LA, and he gets in a rap beef with another rapper from LA. He starts using Kendrick's vocals in AI format to taunt this other rapper he's beefing with, knowing this other rapper takes massive inspiration from Kendrick Lamar, and he doesn't get permission from Kendrick's estate. And then he goes on to buy that Kendrick Lamar X chain that he wore on the GNX tour and flaunts it on Instagram as his opponent is live in concert to try and distract the world from that. Do you see how that could be perceived as, kind of disrespectful? Kind of like you're not really purchasing the chain to honor the legacy of the person who initially created it. I mean, crap, it's not even like Drake, posted that chain with some sort of meaningful caption to commemorate what that death row era in hip hop meant to him, right? He just randomly posted it onto Instagram. Coincidentally, the night that Kendrick Lamar and the Clips were performing live. No, kind words commemorating Tupac's legacy, the legacy behind the chain, what it meant to him. Nothing hip-hop related. It was simply to taunt Kendrick Lamar.
I study
Kendrick Lamar
for a living.
That's why people view this as disrespectful. And you'll see as this video progresses that Drake is making strategic moves to really alienate himself from the entire American hip-hop sector, if you want to call it that, right? Everything from his comments on the Wireless stage saying that American rappers have nothing on UK rappers, to now beefing with legendary American hip-hop journalists like Rob Markman, only doing content with creators like Adin Ross and Bobby Althoff, who obviously have nothing to do with hip-hop culture. Adin Ross even saying that hip-hop is dead. There's no respect there. It's a blatant attempt at trying to alienate himself from the very culture that gave him a career to begin with. So anyways, Joe goes on to say that he tuned into Rob Markman's response to Drake calling him a goof, and Joe was upset that Rob was basically taking it light on Drake.
So then the next day I'm getting my manicure and Rob responds on his platform, YouTube. And I click it, and boy, was this just the cleanest reply that you could do. And I was so mad at Martin. I was so mad at Rob Martin. Too classy.
I loved it. Nah, I like it. It was shady, but classy.
And I don't know, I told you guys in my last video, right? Like something that will stick with me forever was watching Rob Markman break down bars on his YouTube channel. And he stopped to say like, I can't tell you guys exactly who this bar is aimed at because only the artists themselves can tell you that, right? I can give you my interpretation, but I can't speak to what the artist is actually thinking. And as someone who, breaks down bars, what does Drake say? I study rap battles for a living. Yeah, as someone who, aspires to do that on YouTube to the level of a Rob Markman, that was powerful for me because it taught me like you have to always move with a sense of honesty, a sense of integrity. It's not the clickbait and the drama that's going to get you far. It's going to be how you respect the art form that you're discussing. And Rob has always moved with this sense of respect, this sense of honesty. So even with Drake calling him out, he still kept it respectful, right? He still kept it pretty much as objective as possible in terms of what everyone should take out of this situation.
On Sunday, a Lil Wayne fan page clipped the old 2019 interview I had with Tory Lanez. So Tory goes on to recite Lil Wayne's classic verse from Dedication 2 off the Canon record. And he did it like in a dramatic reading kind of style. It was mad funny. But basically, he gets to the end of the verse and he throws the bar to me and I fumbled it. I missed the bar. Yes, I know the verse, but I fumbled, man. He threw the line to me. I dropped it. It was 6 years ago. I don't know what happened, but you got me. Red-handed, you got me. I missed the verse. I screwed up the line. Then Champagne Poppy leaves a comment on IG under the post. Of course, this goof Markman couldn't finish the bar. ... Free Tory. So I'm sitting there like, oh, we got jokes. A little bit of name calling, but we got jokes. I got jokes too. But I got to watch what I say because he might sue. Can't call no names. Just saying. So, but I dropped my response because it's all jokes, right? Then you know what happens after that. It becomes a story. So here's my thing. And anybody who watches me know I'm not really about disrespect. I may say I don't like a song. I may say I don't like a line. I may say, you won or you lost the battle. I may say I don't agree with the lawsuit, but it's never coming from a place of disrespect. I don't do personal attacks. I don't call anybody out their name. We all here just talking music. We talking hip hop. I just call it like I said. I also keep it all about the music. So all that abs, braids, family court, all that stuff, like I stay away from it. If it's not like directly involved with the music, I tend to stay away. And I never lied to y'all one time. Y'all may not agree with my opinion, but when it comes to facts, I don't lie. Never lied to y'all. 21 years in this thing, never lied to the people not once. So here's my thing. I know the storyline is going to attract a new energy, new viewers, just a whole lot of new whatever, right? So what I'm doing. But for me, nothing changes. A great writer once wrote, gotta know yourself. And I know myself, man. After this, I'm not coming on here with no axe to grind or just being disrespectful, because that's not me. But this hip hop thing, this dedication to telling our stories the right way, the best way we can, yeah, that's me. And we all spend a lot of time online, so we know what happens next, right? There's gonna be a lot of fan accounts, a lot of bots, a lot of negativity, a bunch of lies spread. I could see some stories being planted and all that. That's just the game today. But you're not going to catch me acting out of character. I know who I am. And to the homie, man, I get it. It's a tough time. It's a crazy time. It's a lot of stuff going on. It's got to suck. I know. This is not the way. But then again, what do I know, right?
And yeah, Joe Budden says it wasn't spicy enough, right? But that doesn't really seem to be who Rob Markman is. And what would he really gain from going like academic style super rant onto Drake, right? He already got the publicity by Drake just simply mentioning his name. Drake is calling Rob a goofball, but by doing so, he's the one who looks like the goofball. Rob stands everything to gain and nothing to lose by not feeding into that same sort of petty level that Drake is on. But so Joe and his co-hosts kind of discuss, like, what is actually prompting Drake to jump out the gate making comments like this, right? Like, what has Rob Markman ever done to Drake to warrant being called a goofball on a random Instagram post? And the truth is, nothing. But Joe chalks it up to the fact that Drake right now has an issue with essentially anyone who didn't suck his D during the battle.
Why does Drake have such beef with Rob Markman? That's the thing I don't get.
I don't know.
Because for Drake to be Drake and take the time to actually go into the comments of a random post to come after
some old content,
right? Yeah. It seemed weird to me.
Not to me. He seems to have beef with the way that everybody covered the Kendrick battle who didn't suck his.
The thing is, though, the whole Rob Markman, Drake, and Joe Budden saga, that dates back all the way to 2020, long before the beef. Joe was on Instagram Live as he was hosting a pool party, and Drake left a comment on the Instagram Live saying, "Play the story of Adin. I guarantee you Rob Markman will be the only one who knows that song word for word." And it's like, yes, that's a joke, but it's kind of ironic because now he's calling Rob a goof for not knowing the Lil Wayne bars, right? Meanwhile, in 2020, he thinks he's chirping Rob by saying he'd be the only one bumping the story of Adin, but it just speaks to the fact that Rob Markman really cares about hip-hop, right? So much so to the fact that he would know a diss song word for word. And I say that to say, I don't think Drake's issue with these, hip-hop media personalities stems to them not sucking his D during the beef. I think this is an insecurity Drake has had long before the beef. Like, remember when Kendrick put out that Control verse and Drake was doing a press run for his album Nothing Was the Same at the time. So every radio station, every interview host that he went and sat with, they started asking him about that verse. And he was the only one out of every rapper mentioned in Kendrick's verse that, gave a salty answer, not in the form of an actual diss track back, but in the form of a radio interview. And that was the last time we ever saw Drake on a press run, where he really sat down in a non-controlled environment with these radio hosts who can ask him pretty much anything. Every time after that, he would only sit down for an interview where the interview is posted on his page, where he can control what questions were asked. He has full control over the edits. He can clip out whatever he wants. I think he's always resented pretty much any form of competition that doesn't paint him in a good light. That's why we never really saw him even do interviews after the Meek Mill beef, because even though he won that, did he really win the war? Like, every time they would question him about that battle, the questions would stem back to, who is Quentin Miller? How did he end up writing for you? Why were there full-fledged reference tracks where Quentin is rapping these bars that you later rapped word for word? I think at this point he's trying to paint all of these hip-hop journalists as quote-unquote goofballs because that better fits his narrative, right? They've only made him look bad in interviews. Scratch that. He's made himself look bad in interviews, but unintentionally by asking him hip-hop related questions like, what do you think of Kendrick's Control verse? Who is Quentin Miller? Do you feel like it's okay in hip-hop to have someone write reference tracks for you? By asking these type of hip-hop oriented questions, Drake really is pigeonholed into giving an answer that would not make him look good. So I don't think he resents these guys because they didn't suck his D during the beef. I think that he's trying to separate himself from these guys and make the world think that he's above these quote-unquote goofballs, because every time he sat down with them, when they ask him stuff pertaining to hip-hop, he's the one that looks like a goofball. And by going after someone as unproblematic, as neutral as Rob Markman, as easy of a target as that is, because Rob, again, moves with a sense of integrity where he's not going to get into the BS, Drake knows he could let off these chirps and be let off scot-free. Rob is not going to clap back in a dramatic way. He knows he can't go after a Glasses Malone or a DJ Head who are very vocal about the side that they're on, because that would directly show that he's salty about the beef and the outcome of it. So instead, he targets the guys he knows are not going to clap back, and the guys like Rob Markman who are neutral enough to where if you're calling him a goofball, it doesn't necessarily directly look like you're hating on them just because they were crapping on you throughout the beef. Because Rob really wasn't crapping on him throughout the beef. He kept it very 50-50 even with his opinions down the middle. You gotta remember too, like at the beginning of this beef, the hip-hop media was not necessarily on Kendrick's side. I remember Charlemagne saying, of course, Akademiks saying, Maul saying, Fat Joe, Math Hoffa, I think, they were all saying like, wow, like, maybe Kendrick is a little scared to reply, right? Because it took 17 days for him to reply to Taylor Made. Hip-hop media only really started to, call it how it was, that Kendrick won this battle, when he actually won the battle. Before Kendrick responded, the media was on Drake's side.
Kendrick, you're on the clock, gang.
Kendrick on the clock. Okay, yeah. Kendrick is all the way on the clock.
Kendrick, where you at?
The boogeyman's coming.
Which boogeyman?
There's only one boogeyman.
I hear this whole, you're on the clock, you're on the clock, you're on the clock.
Now, neither one of them is going to make me look at somebody away because they're taking their time. Drake did what he had to do, and it looks like he's continuing to do it even with the bots game he's playing. And Kendrick is playing Silent Assassin Kung Fu Kenny games.
Oh my God.
Okay, it's happening.
Boogeyman, Lamar.
Day 17, he rose. He showed a pulse.
It took me 17 days to figure the Drake out like Kendrick. Hey, yo,
Last one.
So anyways, Parks begins to talk about how he read an article called something like The Death of the Album Review, how people don't really value, these critics putting out album reviews. And this ties back to the fact that Joe Budden had a pretty critical review of Drake's album For All the Dogs in 2023, saying that he needs to stop hanging out with young girls because that's all he was rapping about on For All the Dogs, and it just sounded stale. And Drake obviously took direct offense to this, not just mentioning it in Taylor Made, saying, talk about him liking young girls, it's a gift from me. I heard it on the Budden podcast, it's got to be true. But Drake unleashed the wrath on Joe Budden after his critique on For All the Dogs. I mean, look at this. Drake said, Joe Budden, you have failed at music. You left it behind to do what you are doing in this clip, aka podcasting, because this is what actually pays your bills. For any artist watching this, just remember, you're watching a failure give their opinion on this idea of a recipe for success. A quitter giving their opinion on how to achieve longevity. You switched careers because the things that pop into your brain had you broke, living check to check, and the raps you write had 450 men showing up to your shows in dusty Ennis jeans to screw up their face to Mude Music 29 and pretend you are the GOAT. Please, to any artist that's doing what they feel is right, don't let these opinions affect your mindset after the fact. This guy is the poster child of frustration and surrendering. You're retired. We never hung up your jersey, and we don't even remember your number. We know you for doing this, podcasting. You withdrew from rap, not because you accomplished all you need to do, it's because it wasn't working for you. I never want anybody in the generations to think that the whole everybody's entitled to their opinion is a real thing. This is a man projecting his own self-hate, and the fact I did and continue to do everything he wanted to do for himself, if you need to put it in simpler terms, I own a 767 jet. He owns a modest house in the 973 area code and flies first class on special occasions. The last time Drake faced any real criticism for an album that he released, this was his response. He can mask it and say, oh, I was only mad because Joe Budden was talking about me liking young girls, but no. You said it in your music on For All the Dogs. She was 21, she was still a savage, some crap like that. And this post shows that you were mad because he gave his opinion. You literally said it. I want everyone to know that the whole everyone's entitled to their own opinion is not a real thing. So now they're talking about, Drake hating on hip-hop media, and Parks brings up the whole thing about how the album review is dead. The concept of an album review is dead. And I actually have a video coming out about how the whole concept of a classic album really is dying out with this generation. And that ties into the fact that no one really cares about album reviews anymore. And ultimately, it leads to a bigger conversation of the fact that everything is for content these days. So a lot of these big publications like Rolling Stones, Pitchfork, who used to be very critical of different artists, they don't want to necessarily come out the gate saying some crazy stuff about your album because everyone is so divisive these days. Everything ties back to different fan bases who ride or die for their side and who will absolutely go off on your establishment if you say anything minorly negative about their music. If you write up a bad review about a Nicki Minaj album, the bars will be attacking you and boycott your platform forever. And we live in the attention economy. You need the clicks, so you kind of compromise yourself as a result. And this has made Drake indestructible to any sort of criticism from the outside. As long as he keeps continuing to make hits, it doesn't matter how stale or formulaic his music is. J. Cole used to talk about the fact that he was always sad that the pitchforks, the different music critic outlets would review his albums always in the 6s and 7s, but then they would rate Kendrick effortlessly with 9s and 10s every single release. It was relevant back then. If you got a 6 or a 7 on your album, it meant you weren't doing enough. Nowadays, it's kind of irrelevant.
I read an article in the New Yorker actually the other day talking about the decline of music review in general, music criticism in general, how like in the Rolling Stone or whatever, they used to just bash people. And now it doesn't really happen as much because, partially at least because of fan bases being so rabid and annoying that it's like it's not even worth scathing somebody over. And to your point too, the person themselves can now just fire back.
Or now I'm never going to do anything with you guys.
And Joe Budden emphasizes that you can tell which artists still want to get better and still want to take in the critique that respected hip-hop journalists or just journalists in general might have on their music. They had JID, Killer Mike, and Offset as guests on their podcasts. And he was saying, like, you could definitely tell which artists will just jump out the gate and go crazy on you if you say one negative thing about them versus the artists that actually care to hear how they could potentially improve from someone who's genuinely a fan of their music. He emphasizes most artists don't want to do interviews. They just want to be in a controlled environment where they can, again, control the narrative. We're seeing this with Drake now, with Bobby Altov, with Elliott Wilson back in the day. We'll touch on that shortly.
Artists that want you to review their music, I feel like you can tell now. Most artists don't want you to review their music.
Unless it's positive.
I've waxed poetic for years, positive. And the second you say one thing negative, that's the one that they heard. When Killer Mike came up here, when Jid came up here, when Offset came up here, you could just tell the people that, have you heard this album? What did you think? I'm here to hear what you think. Versus the people that are playing a different game that don't really care about the reviews. They want to go to their controlled places.
Environment.
So on the flip side, they emphasize, and I agree, that Drake would actually make a great interview because he's well articulated and he has so many questions that have been left unanswered. Why'd you taunt Pharrell about melting down his chains and bring him into this beef he had no real attachment to? Why are you now taunting this Tupac jewelry? Why'd you use these Tupac AI vocals? How'd you feel about the Heart Part 6 and the response to that? Was that you really waving the red flag? How have you really felt about the success of Not Like Us? Lawsuit stuff aside, how has this battle actually affected you, right? I mean, we're seeing it in the music. He's barely talking about it. And when he does try to reflect on this beef, he does it from the most delusional perspective of, oh, if I really leave the game, like all these girls are going to have to twerk with a dictionary to try to understand Kendrick's music if he's really at the top. Or, I've been screaming no friends in the industry, but somehow I'm all surprised that, all my friends in the industry turned on me. And LeBron was at the pop-out, and I'm very sad about that. It's not real, it's surface-level opinions on something that definitely had a big effect on Drake's life. Like, he had to move his child out of Toronto because his home was getting shot up. There's a million questions to ask him about how this beef has left him. And the OV hoes will say, oh, but you claim you don't care about Drake, but you want him to do an interview. What about your savior, Kendrick? Well, the same goes for him. He should, sit down with another journalist as well and talk about his entire experience. He already kind of has with the Apple Music interview before the Super Bowl, and he was on the winning side, right? Like, we pretty much got all the answers that you could have had from him from the interviews he's already done since the battle happened. Drake hasn't. And the one who actually did it the best, in my opinion, was J. Cole, where he released his, podcast or his web series where he reflected on his entire career. All the insecurities he felt, the, creative process behind his first few albums. It's crazy that the guy who, deleted himself out of the beef, who deleted his music out of this beef, he's the one who ended up talking the most after it.
That's why I would love to see Drake, because I actually think Drake is a good interview. I think he's interesting and smart and funny, but he so rarely now goes to any platforms where he can demonstrate those things outside of the controlled environment.
And the thing I would say here is that, yes, Drake does do interviews in controlled environments, but what does he really have to gain by sitting down with someone within hip-hop media? Like I said before, every time he's looked like a fool. I definitely don't agree with, beefing with respected hip-hop journalists, because he's now isolating himself from a whole sector of the culture that many say he never really was a part of to begin with. And yeah, you could say, he started off as this outsider, Canadian, whatever, but he was always embraced, right? As much as maybe Akademiks will tell you now, like, he hates all these hip-hop journalists because they never embraced him when he came up, he most definitely was embraced, right? He was standing next to Jay Prince. He was standing next to Lil Wayne right away at the beginning of his career. He got every radio placement he could have wanted to. Every journalist was dying to interview him because he blew up pretty much immediately with So Far Gone. Even before So Far Gone, before the Young Money days with Lil Wayne, he was getting features from Trey Songz. In 2007, he was the first Canadian artist to appear with his music video on 106 & Park. There was never a time when Drake wasn't embraced by hip-hop media outlets. But now he has some resentment over them as if they never accepted him. The one thing I will say is that I don't think at this point it makes sense for him to go on to a platform like Joe Budden's, even though Joe Budden did just ban him, because these questions, even though we want answers to them, like, all Drake really has to do to satisfy his fan base is continue putting out hits, right? Let them stay pacified. He doesn't need to shake things up by answering the tough questions. He has everything to lose and nothing to gain by doing so. Ask yourself, what does Drake stand to gain by sitting down with a hip-hop journalist and answering questions about this beef? If you witness the beef, if you picked your side or, have your opinion on the entire thing and how Drake's been moving lately, is that going to change by him giving a couple answers to the tough questions? If he gives an answer to the question of, why did you start bringing up Kendrick's fiance in this battle? Why did you make it personal instead of just keeping it a friendly fate? If he gives you an answer to that, is that going to make you respect him more and judge his music differently and embrace him? No pun intended, but to play off of his own mixtape title, he's already so far gone. There is no benefit for Drake's public perception and his career to go sit down with someone who's going to ask him questions with the intention of getting the harsh truth out of him. That's why you're seeing him do these lighthearted appearances with Bobby Althoff and Adin Ross, where he can get by with, just having fun, tapping into a new audience of, white girls who maybe watch Bobby Althoff, or these young kids who watch Adin Ross. And they'll glaze him. They won't ask him anything tough, anything that'll make him look bad, anything that will embarrass himself. And he can still, show off his personality, resonate with a new audience, connect with whoever's watching this content, but avoid actually touching on anything that can make his reputation look worse than it already does. But yeah, even if he did want to go to a hip-hop media outlet, Joe says forget it, because the BBL buffoon is banned from the podcast.
I know he's about to do this.
Bobby,
another thing with Bobby, another podcast. I would love to see him go out. It doesn't have to be here, although I think it'd be amazing here. But I
not invited up here, buddy.
Fair enough.
Not invited. But see, I like the running theme of that. I like his problem with hip hop media, and I like hip hop media's problem with him. I don't want it to end.
Remember though, back in 2020, it's funny because Joe was asking Drake when he's going to come for an interview.
Come on, you got to talk to more people than just Elliot.
Nah, yo, I can't do this with you right now.
Why?
Because I can't.
Because you're at the embassy?
Nah, I just I know where this is gonna go. It's gonna go left.
No, it's not. Yo, why do you think that about me, man? We can have a smooth talk. You do it with Tory Lanez and all your other fucking buddies.
It's gonna be bad for the brand right now. Oh,
but all the other OVO dudes kick it with me.
I know. Everybody.
You're the only one that avoids me for some strange reason.
Never avoid you. I just don't see you. We're never in the same place.
Because I'm too broke?
I didn't want to say.
You invited Elliot and Bada over there to the embassy. They got to see the Tootsie Slide exclusive. They got to hear Tupac in your bathroom.
Can I have another drink, please?
Look at this. You got a bartender there. Holy shit. Can I have a beverage? I'm parched. Get the fuck out of here.
Yo, go back to your live, man. I'm gonna talk. We have an interview to do for like when the album's ready. I don't want to do this right now.
You've been saying that for a year, and then now I have a whole leaked album with like 30 Drake joints.
That's old shit. That's not the new shit. Don't worry.
All right, fine. Enjoy yourself over there.
I'm gonna be in your comments though. Don't worry.
Yo, but let me ask you, why are you trolling me this way? Honestly, like, you don't think it's hurtful to me?
Why? What do you mean? It's with an encouraging undertone.
But everything that's transpired since then, it makes sense that Joe says he's no longer welcome on the podcast, right? Drake was dissing him on the song Give Me a Hug in 2025, saying Melissa Ford, the other co-host on the Joe Budden podcast, she's a legend from the 6, but she's standing next to a D-sucker, aka Joe Budden. We saw what he had to say about Joe Budden's For All the Dogs criticism, but Joe makes a good point in that he likes the whole thing about Drake having a problem with hip-hop media and hip-hop media having a problem with Drake. But he's giving us a lot to be critical of. There's a reason I talk about Drake more than Kendrick as of late on this channel. I would love to be talking about Kendrick, but what's there to talk about? He keeps it strictly to the music. When the music comes, we're going to be doing a million videos about Kendrick Lamar. When he stepped out on the GNX tour, I did a million videos about it. Every time Kendrick makes a moment, I love covering it. And when he stops making moments, I do retrospectives where we cover everything he's already done. Same thing with J. Cole. Same thing with Tyler. Same thing with Drake. But the thing is, Drake just keeps doing goofy crap, and that's why we end up crapping on him. Like I said before, Drake was embraced by hip-hop media from the very beginning. It's not that they had a problem with him, it's that they have a problem with the way he's currently moving. And until he changes that, he is banned from the Rapaholic show and from Joe Budden's podcast. And they continue talking about how Drake doesn't go on big platforms and answer the big questions. Joe says ultimately he's got all the answers he's needed, but I disagree. Like I mentioned before, I think there's a million unanswered questions, and Drake doesn't really touch on it. Very superficially in the music, but aside from the cryptic subliminal messages, like I said before, he stands zero to gain from actually talking about the harsh reality of everything. There's no answer he could give as to why he's suing or why he mentioned Whitney or why he did anything he did throughout the battle or after the battle that's going to make anyone who currently has a dismay towards Drake change their mind.
No, but see, I want some answers.
I don't want no answers. I think I've gotten all the answers that I was looking for.
Like, we may get our answers for why we think he did a thing. So why do you think you won the beef, or why do you think you didn't win the beef? Or whatever the thing is, whatever feelings he's feeling, we get it through the music, we get it through representation, but we don't get it from him on the platforms where people can ask questions back. I just don't like that. And it's not just him. I mean, we see that with a lot of big stars. They just don't go on platforms anymore.
And Joe also emphasizes, stay on that side. Stay on the side of the Adin Ross and the Bobby Altov. You're making your bed, lay in it. And I agree. I said before, he doesn't win anything by sitting down with a respected journalist who's actually going to challenge him, but don't try and do it later. You can't just act zesty with Bobby Altov and come back on some tough guy mafioso music, then try to play victim in an interview, crying about no one giving you a fair chance or people blindsiding you like you did with that LeBron interview after the Pusha T beef. I think you lost the privilege of playing victim in an interview after you crapped on a respected hip-hop journalist like a Rob Markman, and you're laying your bed by only turning to these streamers who are completely detached from hip-hop.
Yeah, but it's different with him because now every day or for the rest of time, it just looks like a music video for Not Like Us. Stay over there with Adin Ross. Stay over there with Bobby. Stay wherever you feel comfortable at. That's still a controlled environment.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's what I'm saying.
But stay over there. Like, I kind of take offense that he even is calling Rob Markman a goof. Rob Markman is comfortable in his skin. Never did nothing wrong to nobody.
Yeah.
Just a good dude all around the board.
Again, my take is that he'll never go somewhere where he can't control the answers. Why do that when it's more conducive to his brand to just shut the hell up and drop hits? And as for Rob Markman, like I said before, right? Rob Markman minds his business. He moves on integrity. That's why Drake is looking at that like an easy target, because he can call Rob Markman a goof and not expect Rob Markman to verbally assassinate him the same way Kendrick Lamar did. Rob Markman is going to take the high road. And as a result, he doesn't look like a goof.
But if you're going to stay in the white spaces, Drake, there's a point where Michael Jackson wasn't doing, local radio, but he would do Barbara Walters. He still went places where people asked him questions that he wasn't expecting, that he couldn't control the answer to. Drake, go do that. There's a million places that'll ask you a tough question outside of hip-hop context, if that's what you want.
And the thing is, it's kind of a sad question, a sad reality to, ponder on, but what does an interview necessarily not just bring Drake, but any artist at this point, right? And this is coming from someone who not only would obviously benefit greatly from interview culture still being a huge thing, right? Like if artists were incentivized to come on random YouTube channels and start talking about music, that would be my dream. I would love that. And as a kid, I mean, I grew up watching the Big Boy interviews, the Breakfast Club interviews, whatever it was. I love that stuff. I wish artists still did that. But I think the reason as to why, interviews have been quickly dwindling over the last 5-10 years, it's pretty much as clear as day. They used to have jobs for PR people just training entertainers on how to give clean-cut, unproblematic answers within interviews. But that's got to be a stress for entertainers, right? Like when you're trying to promote your album or your book or whatever, and you got Charlamagne, Angela Yee, and DJ Envy all, tag teaming, asking you these hard-hitting questions that you got to answer at like 7 a.m, when all you want to do is just talk about the product that you're there to promote. What incentive would an artist have to go and do that when the new format of podcasts and streams have made it way more pleasant and peaceful for them to just have a very easygoing conversation with whoever's hosting them? And it's unfortunate, but the DDGs, the Black Boy Maxes, the Adin Ross, whoever, they're going to get just as many views as the old-fashioned radio hosts. The only difference is they're not going to ask you anything that could potentially tarnish your brand. So it's a no-brainer. Go to the streamer who you'll have fun with, who won't ask you anything that you don't want to answer, and you'll still get the promotion that you were looking for, or go to the radio host who's going to press you on who you're dating, what else you took, what your insecurities are, all for the same type of eyeballs and promotion. I could understand why the interview is no longer a priority for artists. But speaking of Drake, he now has a Houston residence. I wonder if he's going to go sit down with Joe Rogan. Another easygoing conversation, no hard-hitting questions, someone outside of hip-hop who's not going to ask him about the L's he took in this rap beef. I think if you're waiting on a hip-hop Drake interview, you might want to tune into his lawsuit because you'll get more answers from the hard-hitting questions from La Brianna in court than you will off a hip-hop platform. But let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you in the next one.